Well, I've never seen a pan tilt camera do that before. Hello, I'm Wanderer001, and this is my review of the Reolink E1 Zoom. I'll start this video off by saying that Reolink did reach out to me and provide me with the E1 Zoom in order to do an unbiased review, which is what you're going to get. In this video, I'm going to cover general hardware specifications, setup, the Reolink app, as well as give you audio and video samples for this camera. So let's get into it. Starting off, the Reolink E1 Zoom is 4.3 inches high and has a depth of 3.1 inches and a weight of 250 grams. Coming to the front, we have lots to talk about. Up here at the top, we have our daylight sensor that's going to help trigger the camera to go into night vision mode. And then along the sides, we have 10 IR lights that help to make night vision with this very crisp. Next, we come to our camera lens. This is a 2560 by 1925 megapixel CMOS sensor with 3-time optical zoom. That's right, this has optical zoom as opposed to other pan tilt cameras that only have digital zoom. Granted, this does have 6 times digital zoom as well, but it's that optical zoom that really separates this camera from others like it. If we roll our camera head back a little bit, right down there, you can see that is the microphone for two-way talk with this camera. And if we roll it back further, you'll notice that there is a micro SD card slot and a hard reset button right there. The one thing with the micro SD card slot, as you can see, it's a little close to the bottom here, so it can be a little tricky to get that in and out. Rotating back up to our lens area, because this has an optical zoom, you also have 2.8 to 8 millimeter autofocus with f1.6 with the IR cut, meaning when the IR lights are on. We have a field of view vertical of 37 to 75 degrees, horizontal of 355, as you might imagine, it turns, and then a vertical from here of 50 degrees. The video that you'll get out of this is 20 frames per second. Those IR lights have a range of 40 feet, and our SD card, as we come back down here, has a maximum capacity of 126 gigs. And that takes care of the front. As we rotate the camera to the back, you're gonna notice this cutout. This is for the speaker. This speaker is for the audio from your two-way talk, but it also allows the E1 to have a siren to ward off people. That sounds like this. As we move to the bottom of the base, I'm going to talk about the design of this pan tilt camera. You might notice that the pan area is held within this disc. Kind of reminds me of an Echo Dot. This helps keep all the cableage that you have to plug into this from really being finicky and hard to work with, as I've had experience with other manufacturers. If you've seen any other E1 Zoom reviews, you might notice they don't talk about this, the Ethernet port. Well, that's because this is an upgraded version of the E1 Zoom that includes the ability to hardwire into Ethernet this particular camera, which is great. Right there we have our dedicated power supply, and while we're talking about our power supply, let's also discuss what we get in the box with the E1 Zoom, because as you might imagine, you get a dedicated power supply. This power brick is not like others where you have a USB cable that goes into a USB-C or micro USB. This is a dedicated power supply. This also is ridiculously long at 10 feet in length. This is one of the longest cables that I've had for a pan tilt camera. Next, we move on to mounting options. This is a plate that goes underneath the camera, which I'll show you in a moment, as well as a mounting sticker. Speaking of mounting, we also have mounting hardware. Here you can see you get a set of 3 screws and 3 anchors, and then right there, you even get something to reset the camera if you needed to. Bringing the bottom of our camera into focus, here you can see that channel that our mounting plate situates itself in, which is not doing it very well at the moment because I have tape in there. There we go. The mounting plate is useful if you want to have this upside down and screwed somewhere. If you don't, you're just gonna have these little rubber feeties that help raise it off of whatever piece of furniture you have it on and help to keep it in place. Because this is a smart camera, there is a setup process that goes along with it. So let's take a quick look at what the setup process for the Reolink E1 Zoom was like. This will be setup of the Reolink E1 Zoom pan tilt camera. First and foremost, you're going to have a Reolink app that you're going to have to download and install onto your smartphone. You do not need to have an account in order to attach the camera to the application, but an account is always helpful for doing things in the future. Right now, we are going to come up to the upper right-hand corner of the screen and press the plus sign because we want to add something. Notice that it automatically is bringing the camera feed into focus because, well, there is a QR code on the bottom of the Reolink camera that we are just going to scan, just like that, and it gives us the option of how we would like to connect this. We can do this over Wi-Fi, we can choose network, meaning we can plug this in because the back of this has an Ethernet port, and we have the ability to watch a video on how to do either. The one thing that I like about choosing Wi-Fi is that the Reolink camera is compatible with both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. So depending on if you want faster speeds and don't want to worry about the range, you have that option. Well, right now it's asking us to make sure that the Reolink is plugged in, so we're going to do that right now. So once the Reolink is plugged in, you might see right there is a blue light, and we're just going to give this a moment to see if that blue light is going to pulsate or change colors, just so that we know that it has established the actual connection to the camera and that it's all powered up. I see it blinking, but I can also hear some stuff going on in the background. Sounds like a motor check, but we're going to say that's blinking. So I'm going to select next. All right, so there is a voice prompt that we're supposed to wait to hear.
Welcome to Reolink. Please install Reolink app and scan the QR code on the camera. Willkommen bei Reolink. Bitte Reolink app installieren und den QR-Code auf der Kamera scannen. Bienvenue à Reolink. Veuillez installer l'application Reolink et scanner le code QR sur la caméra. Benvenuto a Reolink. Si prega di installare l'app Reolink e scansionare il codice QR sulla telecamera. Bienvenido a Reolink. Por favor, instale la aplicación Reolink y escanee el código QR en la cámara.
Well, there's no doubt that you heard that. That is a very powerful speaker. And
welcome to Reolink.
all right, we're going to do this.
And scan the QR code.
We're going to do this real quick. So I scanned it, I've heard it. I'm going to select next. It wants to know my device's location. Now we can choose a Wi-Fi network. Go put that over there. We can choose a Wi-Fi network. I'm on my secondary IoT network, so I'm going to quickly put in a password for this. I put in the password and we're going to go next. All right, it's going to flash a code up here that we're going to scan.
Camera is connecting to your router. Please wait. Connection to the router succeeded. Welcome to Reolink.
Wow. Okay, it said it was going to connect. I have heard the prompt. We're going to select next. We're going to move that.
Connection to the router succeeded. Welcome to Reolink.
Once we've done this, we now have to create a device password.
Connection to the router succeeded. Welcome to Reolink.
Yes, we understand. So right there, default name we can leave as admin, but to enter a device password, we're going to do this real quick. All right, there we go. I've got a device password. It lets you know the strength of the password, which is always a nice touch. So this is going to be separate from the network password that you have. I'm going to put next, name your device, and I'm going to be super fancy with my naming. We're just going to call it the E1 Zoom. All right, so we've got the ability to share this via a QR code already, but we're just going to select finish. And maybe I'll do that later. And right there, that is a feed. And that completes the setup of the Reolink E1 Zoom. There you see, still snapshot. So that's just under my cameras right there. Coming back to the camera itself, you saw that the setup process for the Reolink was a little different than you might have seen with other pan-tilt cameras. And that's because of the ecosystem that Reolink has. If this is your first camera, you might not really appreciate that off the bat. Reolink has a very robust system that you can build into, just starting with something like the E1 Zoom. Speaking of this camera in particular, you saw during setup, it can utilize both 2.4 as well as 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi spectrum. This is the first camera that I have tested that actually allows you to use the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. And that's important because if you have this close enough to your Wi-Fi router, you can take advantage of that 5 gigahertz speed if you don't need to have a long range with this. But they give you that flexibility in having 2.4 gigahertz as well if you need to put this further away. But that 5 gigahertz helps you support that larger video quality that you get with this camera. Another thing that you get with this camera is the ability to have Google Assistant. Sadly, Alexa is missing from the lineup for this. I couldn't find it on their website or in the application. That's not a deterrent, but a data point for you so that you know, hey, if I like Alexa, Reolink doesn't support it. They do have their own Reolink cloud service that you can utilize. Know that that is region limited, so if you're outside of the US, it's kind of spotty as to if you can utilize it. Another thing that I like to test out with all of my cameras is actual power usage. And that's because stated usage, well, can be flubbed a little bit. Not saying that Reolink does that, but I like actual data when it comes to this. So in the case of when the Reolink is just idling, you get 2.7 watts of power being utilized. When the IR sensors are turned on, it jumps up to 5 watts. Now, if you are moving the Reolink, you get between 6.5 and 7 watts. That's even if the IR lights are on. This does have one of the higher ranges of power usage of cameras that I've tested. However, there is a lot going on in this camera that can be adjusted and manipulated or viewed. All of that is done through the application for the Reolink E1 Zoom. So let's take a look at that now. This is the app for the Reolink E1 Zoom. Here we can see I only have the one camera right there, but if we wanted to add more cameras, we would simply click the plus sign up here. If we were subscribed to any cloud services, we can access them through that tab there. Or if we had any IoT integrations, we can have that listed right here. If we wanted to add any, we simply press the plus sign again. We're gonna come back to our cameras over here. This is extra information. There's a lot that you can do with this application. So just know that I brought you here for one specific area, which is this albums area. So when you make a recording or take a picture, you can access them from here. Otherwise, it ends up in the timeline, which we're gonna talk about a little later. But here you can see store, product registration, deals, Reolink capture, support center, album, pay attention to that. Adjust the device order if you had more than one, settings for the overall app, and then about. And then here we have light, or we can change this to dark mode. But that was all done through our side panel there. Here we have access to the settings for this individual camera, but we're gonna talk about that from another location. We want to see what we can do with this camera. So we're going to tap onto our camera, and that's going to initiate the live feed for the camera. Notice it takes a little bit to get going, but now we are in our live feed. Right here at the top, we're going to start with these 3 dots. These 3 dots, if I tap on them, will allow me to do channel selection, which is if I had more than one Reolink camera. Switching between day-night view, which right now is set to auto, but I can change it to black and white or color, which is what they just call day mode. So black and white will switch it over to the night mode with the IR lights. Coming back up to our 3 dots, we have immersive view. This, if I tap on it, pretty much forces it into taking up your entire screen. If I flip the phone sideways, it will take up the phone's screen real estate as well. Now this right here, picture-in-picture mode, this is really cool, and so far Reolink's the only camera that I've tested that has a feature like this. If I select picture-in-picture, well, guess what? Here's my phone's desktop, and I have a live picture that I can just float wherever I want. Now, you'll notice on Android, I can bring it down there and get rid of it entirely, or I can tap on it and make it bigger, and it brings me right back to the camera selection. Underneath that, we have an alarm icon. If I tap on that, it'll turn the alarm on. Coming down to our functions right here, we have a pause. So if I tap on this, it pauses the live feed and recording from this particular camera, and I have to tap it back on in order to get the live feed to start again. Right here, I have a mute. This will allow me to toggle audio from the camera. So now I can hear if my cats are getting into anything. I can tap that off to keep the camera muted. To the right of that, I have a camera icon. If I tap on that, it takes a picture, and then we'll save it to that album that we talked about before and to our playback area, which we're gonna get to. We also have the ability to record. So this is recording, again, what it's seeing in real time, and I tap that off, it saves the recording. Notice I have the option to share right there if I wanted to push it out right from there. It saves it again to the playback area, but also to that albums. It's important to know where that albums is because I didn't know where that was at first. To the right of that, we have what they're calling high. If you select this, this is actually the bitrate or the clarity of the camera feed. So clear is the highest, balance is your mid, and then fluent is your low. Again, some of the wording's a little weird, so I want to make sure that you know what that is. Right here, well, tap on that. It sends it to full screen mode and turns it on its side. Notice we still have access to all those camera controls. I'm going to select back on my device to bring me back. Now we're going to come down here. Right here, we've got a big button for talk. If I select that, we've got some options here. 1, earphone, which is noiseless, tap to talk, and volume. These 2 come into play once you actually turn this on. And I do feel bad for my cats because they'll probably come into frame looking for treats because now I can speak to them. Right here, this is the volume control for the camera itself, meaning I can control how loud this is. Now, this is at its lowest point and it is already ridiculously loud. If I come over here, this is earphone or noiseless. Tapping this means that I won't hear anything through the application. Instead, I would have to hold it up to my ear to hear it. But I'm going to turn that off so that my cats don't hate me and wonder why they're not getting treats. If I select this X, it gets rid of that option and brings us back to our main screen. Right here, we've got our clip. If I select clip, this is a cool feature where, notice at the top, I have a visual of what it sees, and at the bottom, I've got this box. And this box I can drag around, which changes the visual up here. The box can also get bigger and smaller depending on what I want to clip. Now notice I've got a cat just hanging out up there, and let's say I want to clip that. Well, I would zoom in on him, and then I can either take a picture, and it's going to take a picture of that zoomed in, pushed in, clipped area, or I can hit record, and it's going to record that in that zoomed in function. Now, if I pull this out while it's recording, it will record as I'm changing the aspect. I'm going to turn that off, and then I'm going to close. And again, those clips save to the playback and save to the album that we showed on the first page. Next, PTZ functions. This is your pan, tilt, zoom. That's why you're getting this camera. It is a pan, tilt, zoom camera. Right now we have our PTZ controls, so if I tap this way, it will move the camera to the right. If I tap down, it will move the camera down. Now, the one thing that I wish this had, that some other manufacturers have, is a warning letting you know you have reached the absolute bottom. You do see arrows popping up there, but notice when I move it up, and there's room to move it up, those arrows still show up, because, well, that's just letting you know, hey, the camera's going in this direction. So I wish that there was like a little red or X or something to let you know, hey, you can't do anything else. One thing that separates the E1 Zoom versus the regular Reolink Pan Tilt is this function here, which is zoom. So you've got a slider that you can move and have the camera start zooming in. This is a physical optical zoom. This is not digital. And I can use the plus sign to slowly creep it in if I wanted to. And the slower that you do this, the better that the autofocus will be. So right there, the autofocus is trying to figure out what I want to focus on. So if I come over here and focus, zoomed in as far as I can. So I'm going to bring camera up a little bit and bring it over to where the cat was to see if the autofocus will focus itself. And if it doesn't, there's actually a focus button right here, which you can play with to see if you can get it to focus. Again, the lighting right now in my living room is not the best, but you can see as I slowly back this out, the focus is coming into play. And probably right about here is the best focus that I'm going to get with the current lighting situation that I have. There we go, right about there. Now, that is a physical optical zoom that this camera has, but it also has pinch to zoom. So if I do this, not only do I have the optical zoom, but now I have digital zoom. And there we can see my cat's just kind of hanging out there. It does get a little blurry when you start zooming in like that. But let's say if I come over here, I've got a clock right here. If we zoom in on this and then we play with the focus, the clock itself is in shadow, so that's making this a little difficult, but you can kind of read the Roman numerals there on the clock itself, but we're gonna pinch that out a little bit, move the camera over and over again, one more time, and we're gonna try and zoom in on this right here and see how that does. So it looks a little out of focus, so we would come into our focus, just letting you know how different lighting cues can mess with the actual visibility of anything, because this is kind of sitting in a darker area. Yeah, it does not like that. So you can click and drag this to do larger changes. There you go. So you can almost make out words that are on that picture frame. But what we're gonna do is I'm gonna minimize that. I'm gonna take the zoom and pull it all the way back. And then we're gonna pinch to zoom out. So there we go, we're all the way out. And it is automatically focusing itself. So we come here, it's got the minus focus sign. So that means it is as good as it's going to get. So that's our pan tilt controls, and we can just kind of drag this around and it'll move as if it was a joystick. And we'll put the cat back in frame. You can see up here in the upper right hand corner, that icon indicates that there is motion that the scene is detecting. That will also show up with a pet and person icon if it detects those as well. We also, in our PTZ area, have a couple of extra functions. We've got our return to motion point. So selecting that will push the camera back to its true center. You have reset motion point. If you want to have something that's not the starting point, you can reset it that way. You have auto return to motion point, meaning if it tracks something or you've been moving it, when a certain amount of time has passed, in this case 60 seconds, it will return to its center point. So you can either toggle that on or off, or adjust how long you'd like that before it returns to center. Next, we have our preset points. So you can set several preset points that the camera will kind of jump through. So you can have 3 or 4 different locations. Hey, pay attention here, pay attention here, pay attention here. Now I can edit one that I have already, can change the name. I can delete it if I want to, and then I can press add, and then give it a marked. Now, the presets are going to be wherever you have the camera at that time, so make sure that you have your camera in place and then mark the preset. My suggestion would be that you turn off the auto return in case you're not working fast enough. Coming over to our three dots, we have our calibration. This will send the camera spinning around and set it back to its original set point, but we're not going to do that. I'm going to hit the X to bring us back to our main screen because that was all of our PTZ functionality. Coming over to our playback, here we can access all of the clips that we have taken. Now, this is kind of a cool feature. If we look across the top here, you're gonna see numbers. These numbers are based on a calendar. Right now, I am actually filming on the 6th, but you'll notice 1, 2 are shaded in, 3 is not, 4 is, 5 is not. This lets you know at a glance, hey, there's something that happened here that you probably want to pay attention to. If I select this option right here, it will show me an actual calendar that I can pick and choose where I want to go to. And down here, we have a timeline. So I'm going to pick the 4th because that's when I was doing a lot of testing. And on the 4th here, you could see anywhere that there are these blue indicator lines, that means that something happened that you should pay attention to. And they correspond to these across here. Notice on this first clip, it's got a dot, a person, and a pet. That means that there was motion, pet, and a person in that. And I can drag anywhere I want along this timeline at the bottom. The only thing I wish that this would allow you to do is zoom in on the timeline, pinching a little bit. If I select this particular one on the timeline, it will start playing it up here, and there's a cat moving over there. I can take a quick snapshot, I can record this, and I can change the bitrate for this. And I'm just gonna tap to pause right there. Down here, if I select this, this is a filter option. So I can filter along this for, hey, just show me motion. So now it'll only show me clips with motion. Take motion off, notice now there's no clips. Show me clips with pets. Selecting that, now things that have pets will show up. Notice that you can still have motion along with the pet, but it's going to find ones that have the pet. Just like person, find me all the things that have people. This is actually a really cool feature. Again, wish that I could pinch to zoom a little better on the bottom here, but other than that, this is really nice. If I come up here to these ellipses, I click on that and it changes the view. So now, instead of that timeline view, I get it more of a gallery thumbnail view. Want to stop that? Click that, you go back to your timeline. If we come down and limit what we're looking for to just pets, a pet clip right here, and this will allow me to show you some of the cooler features that you get with your playback. If I select this right here, that's gonna start this stream, and I'm going to pause that because I'm going to show you up here. There is a 1x, that's with the default. If I select this, I can speed up this clip or slow it down. So I can slow this down to 0.25, or I can speed this all the way up to 16x. I'm just gonna do 4x for the purposes of this, and then we'll kind of see there'll be a cat walking around. I'll move the camera, it will follow the cat to see what she was up to, and then I'm gonna pause that because her face is in the camera. And then the clip will end as soon as she jumps down. And the reason I want it to get back to the beginning of this clip, or to the end in this case, because I'm going to pause it, I'm going to restart it, pause it, and then drop it back down to the normal speed, because the other thing that we can do from here, aside from viewing our clips, is that we can download them. So right next to the how fast you want to watch this, there's a download. If I select this, this is one of the great features that I like about Reolink. That red line indicates where your video is. Notice on either side of that, there's this, where I can drag the start position and end position of this clip. So unlike other manufacturers, when you go to download something and you have to download the whole clip, well, maybe I just want to get the close-up of my cat right here. So I can go right there, and then I watch this red line and I watch it continue. There's her face in the camera as she's sniffing around, and I'm gonna wait until it's just done with her and she backs off. So there's the face again, and here's her walking away. And I'm going, okay, that's a good place to end it. And I just push that there. It will stop the clip right there and then loop it again. So you can double check to make sure that's what you want. And then I can hit download. When I download, it only downloads that 23-second clip as opposed to the full 1 minute and 30 clip that I had down here. That is one of the unique features that I have found with Reolink, and it has saved me a lot of space and time, especially when I was running my tests and downloading them. And then X puts you back to the actual camera. And that's everything that we can do with the camera controls for the Reolink E1 Zoom. Up here in the upper right-hand corner next to those three dots that we played with before, we have a sprocket. This sprocket is going to bring us into the settings, and there are a lot of settings that you can do with this. This makes the E1 Zoom one of the most versatile and confusing cameras that I have ever tested. That's not bad, that's not good, that's just information. So let's take a look at what we can actually change here. We have the name of our camera, and it's indicating how much space is left on the micro SD card that we have in it. If I select this, it will give us a lot of device information, but this is where you can change the name of the camera and where you can check for firmware. Other things in there, personal, won't show. Next we have our network. Selecting this will allow you to change your network. Remember, the Reolink E1 here is a 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz camera. Moving on, we have display. Well, here is our display. It's showing us in real time. Right here, we can flip vertically. So selecting that, oop, look, everything's upside down. I'll put it back. Flip horizontally. Well, now left becomes right, right becomes left. This flip horizontally is something that I haven't seen on any other cameras, but again, will make it more versatile in where you can place it. Quality, if I select this, here we have clear, fluent. So this is our high setting and our low setting. If I want to select clear and make changes to it, this is the big thing. Right now, this is set for 2560 by 1920, 20 frames per second, and a maximum bit rate. If I select this, I can customize this. I can customize the resolution. I can customize the frame rate. I can customize the maximum bit rate and then hit save. This right here is a level of camera control that I have not seen with any other manufacturer that I've tested. You can do the same with the lowest rating as well. Here we have auto frame rate. If I select that, we have gradual, constant, and auto. Gradual is what's on by default, so my recommendation, leave it on unless it's not working for you. Another thing that I've never seen in a camera, anti-flicker. Selecting this, depending on your region, LED bulbs and fluorescent bulbs have a different hertz rate at which they flicker. So if you take a US camera over to the EU, you might notice some flickering when you're recording. This will allow you to change that. Right here we have day-night. Well, I showed you where you could access this before. Auto will switch between the two automatically. Color leaves it in day mode, and black and white puts it permanently in night mode. Brightness, well, right here we've got a slider. If I move this over to the right, you can see it's all washed out now, but you can dial in how you want this to look. So this is a darker image over here. So if I want to make that darker image a little lighter, I can move that over while sacrificing the color on that side of my screen because that's a brighter area. I'm gonna put this back to about what I had before. And again, these camera controls you don't get in a lot of other cameras. Moving on, we've got our camera name. So bottom right, that's gonna be the E1 Zoom. I can either hide it or move it anywhere that I'd like. Likewise, we have the date. Date for me right now is front and center, but if I select, I can move that so you can place it wherever you like. Watermark, that's gonna be your Reolink, that's up there. I can toggle that on and off if I don't want it. Next, we have privacy mask. Selecting this will allow you to create a box, and that box will block out whatever's there. So let's say you have this camera mounted and you've got a neighbor, let's say neighbor's back there, and I don't want them appearing on my camera feed. Well, I put that there, and guess what? When I view my camera or when I have recordings, that area becomes blacked out, as you can see demonstrated right here, and you can have up to 4 of these boxes, and then save when you're ready. I like cameras that have this feature because it allows you to kind of keep specific areas private. So there you can see I kind of left those on there. So we're gonna go back in there and remove and continue. And now they're all gone, and I'm gonna hit save. So there you go. And I also appreciate the fact that whatever I change, this is a live feed letting me know this is exactly what it's gonna look like. Coming down, we have advanced, and well, advanced, here we have threshold, auto switch for color mode and night mode. So here, how sensitive do we want the switch between night mode and day mode to be? The customization and controls that you have over this camera are ridiculous. Coming down, we have brightness and shadow. So right now I have it on auto for color display and black and white, but you can toggle those off and look, you get more functions. So for black and white, you can change your values for brightness and shadow and then restore default for both if you want, or you just leave it like this and let the camera figure that out for you. Customization is key with these cameras, and that's the bottom here. So we're gonna select back because that was all under our display. We've got a lot to go through. Moving on, we have device volume. Right here we can see this is the volume coming from the camera itself. It's peaked right now, so it's at its loudest, and let me tell you, it is very loud. Right here, if I select that, it will, and we're gonna drop this down a little bit so that my cats don't freak out. I can test the volume by selecting this, and it will trigger an audio test on the camera itself. Coming back, we've got our detection alarm. So if I select this, there's a lot of functionality built into this area that I wish was placed somewhere else or called something else. But here we have detection zones. If you're familiar with a detection zone, you can select an area that you wish to monitor. This Reolink does it a little differently in that you paint detection zones. So right here, you can see I can create these fluid things. I can also erase, maybe I want to fix that, or I can say erase all and it gets rid of everything. Or I can paint all and say everything is my zone. And then I can use my eraser tool and say, well, maybe just this area I don't want to pay attention to. This is actually a really interesting way of doing this instead of creating boxes or using a grid. This is a grid, but the grid is small enough that you can get some customization, noticing I have like a round function right there. I'm going to select back because I don't want anything selected at the moment. Alarm sensitivity, we've got settings. So motion detection right now, I have that set on 41. You could scroll that left to right and that will make the sensitivity change. Back, we have our smart detection. Well, right now you can set your sensitivity levels for individual things. So person detection or pet detection. These are free with Reolink. I'm not paying for these. These are just built into the camera. So if you're not getting the pet notifications that you want, you can go, well, maybe make that a little more sensitive. So right there, it's letting you know, hey, you can see the dog is a little blurry now. The dog was pretty much there. The dog is solidly there. So maybe my cats are being a little troublesome and I want to get them even if I'm not sure. So we're gonna hit save. You might get a couple more false positives with that, but the fact that it's there is great. I'm gonna select back and we're gonna come down to our alarm delay. Right here, this is how long can something stay in the frame before it sends a notification or a detection alert again. So in this case, I have up to 8 seconds for both or 0, meaning if I leave it at 0, it's gonna let me know, hey, something's been seen, something's been seen, you should go look at it. So sliding scale, I love it, it's great. Object size, this is another neat one. Hypothetically, for a person or a pet, do I wanna have something smaller than or bigger than? So with a pet for detection, I want bigger objects. And then right here, you could say, hey, this is the size of the object that the pet needs to be bigger than. So for me, if I make this about the size of this right here, that means that a pet would need to be bigger than this object before I get a trigger. And you can do that with people as well. So maybe you only want to target small people and get notifications as to adults instead. Again, that's all under object size. Auto tracking. Toggling this on or off will allow the camera to follow whatever it's targeting. And notice right here, you can select person or pet. So you can have, hey, maybe I just want my pet to be followed around and not people. This is the one feature that I wish they would move somewhere else because detection alarm does not seem to fit with auto tracking. But we're gonna select back because that's our detection alarm area. And coming down, we've got camera recording. It's on. I have the toggle right here, on or off, but this will not turn the camera lens up or down. This just stops recording and you can still access the live feed. You can schedule this. So hypothetically, if there's specific days or times, you can set that here. And what I mean by that, if I come over to the timer section, you can set time, like right there. I can set a time, enable versus disable, can do it singly. You can select your days, go back because I'm not going to do any of that, and I'm going to do alarms. You could do the same with that. So if I click on a specific day, it's enabled all the time. Well, I can say, no, maybe disable something right there, change the date. There's a lot of functionality here, and then I can save if I want. We're not going to, we're just going to select back. Here we have post motion record. What this will allow me to do is even after something has triggered this and it's moved out of frame, the camera will continue recording after the fact. So you can have a minimum of 15 seconds and up to 1 minute. If a person triggers motion, but then the camera doesn't see a person anymore, well, you can have it record up to a minute after it figures out that a person has been through the frame and not have to worry about losing any of that information. That's a great feature right there. Overwrite, well, that simply means that the oldest stuff on your SD card gets overwritten. You can select that off, but then just know you'll have to change out your SD card. Moving on. Notifications. So we have push notifications. I have this turned on. This will allow push notifications to get sent to your phone. You can select your interval. I have it at the minimum, which is 20 seconds, and then up to 120 seconds is the maximum that you can do. Just like everything else, we can do a schedule, which will allow you to say, hey, maybe during specific days and times, I don't want you to push something. Here's how you'd be able to change that. We're gonna go back because I want it sent to me all the time. We're gonna go back again. We also have the option for email alerts. If you add an email, it will not only do a push notification if you have it set up, but you can have it send an email to you. And we're gonna go back. We have FTP upload. This is going to be a little more of an advanced feature. So we've got FTP upload is on by default. You can schedule when that'll happen, just like every other thing, scheduling. But here you have your FTP settings, meaning that you will have to set up the FTP or file transfer protocol. If you don't know what that is, stay out of there. It's a little more advanced than I'm going to show in this particular overview, but just know you have settings here with this camera for that. Here we have our siren. Right now I have it off. If I turn this on, it means that when motion is detected, the siren will go off. So if you detect a person and want to scoot them away without having to manually trigger the siren, toggle this switch and the camera will do that for you. Here we have linked devices. Well, right now I only have one device, which is why it's showing 0. I can add more devices and then have them all linked to this account where I can toggle through them. Share this camera. If I tap on this, it will pop up with a QR code. The person will need to have their own Reolink account, but then they can scan the QR code and add this camera. Here we have time lapse. I always like when a camera has time lapse because, well, you can do some pretty cool things, much like this. So if I go try now, it'll give me some presets. Event, people, traffic, moving clouds, sunrise, sunset, construction, blooming, or custom. So if I select clouds, it goes, hey, this is what I'm gonna do, and all I have to do is hit start. If I do blooming, notice the duration has changed, and it lets you know, hey, this is the general file size that you're gonna get. If you wanted to, you can do custom, meaning I can start the capture, how long, interval, the quality, and the type. So photo versus video. This is a cool feature that some other cameras don't have because of that selection of video versus photo. And when everything's said and done, you can throw it up here. That's going to be your time-lapse gallery. I haven't kept any time lapses there. And if I select the sprocket icon on this page, I have the ability to override time lapses if I turn that on. We're going to go back and come down to advanced. Because you thought we were in advanced before? No, this is advanced. Here we have user management. Selecting this, this will allow you to set the camera to illegal login lockout, meaning if you try and log into this camera multiple times with the wrong username and password, it will temporarily lock the system out. You have the camera admin, which is different than the account for the app itself. Right now I have me. I can add another admin, which will have complete control on all the screens that we've been looking at, or I've got users. I can just add a general user or viewer of this camera. We have date and time. Selecting this will allow you to adjust your date and time. We have record audio. Having the ability to turn this off and on is important. There are some states in the US where it is illegal to capture video with audio, so you can toggle that off under advanced. Here we have infrared light. Well, right now it's on auto. We can leave it stay on all the time. It's not really going to help you in the daytime, but you could leave it on if you wanted. And then here we have our LED status light, on or off. Again, that's kind of buried in there, and the LED status light, in my opinion, is not the greatest because it's not super bright, and depending on the angle of the camera lens, you might not see it. Last but not least, we have reboot, which will reboot your device, and then restore, well, that restores your device to factory. And if we come back, that was all under advanced settings. These are all the settings that you have for the Reolink E1 Zoom. There is a lot that you can do with this camera, both functionality-wise and customization-wise. So I hope you have enjoyed that deep dive into this very thorough app. From the app you saw, there is a lot that you can do. The application gives the Reolink a level of customization that I have never seen for a consumer-grade pan-tilt camera. If you need this camera to be modified to suit your best needs, this camera allows you to do that in spades. You saw that. Just because the camera lets you tweak it to better suit your needs, it's useless if the video quality is garbage. Well, to preserve the actual high resolution video quality of the Reolink E1 Zoom, I will have a link over there in the corner to a separate video which maintains the actual resolution of the video that you can get from this, so I don't have to downscale it for this video. But aside from video, the next important thing is audio quality. So let's take a listen to what the audio quality is like from and for the E1 Zoom here.
Audio test. Reolink E1 Zoom. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Test 1. Test 2. Test 3. And
Rotation noise. Zoom noise test. Zoom in and focus. This will be audio for the Reolink E1 Zoom, just giving you an idea of what things sound like. And I will continue to back up and use the camera app to make sure that I don't walk into anything or any pets. This will be my normal talking tone, and we'll see how far I get from the camera while it can still pick up my audio. Once I get to as far as I can, which is the back of my house right here in the dining room, I'll do a test. 1, 2, 3. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. There you heard audio quality, pretty good for, again, something this size. There's a lot of space back here to have a speaker, but that does not mean that there are no faults for the E1 Zoom. I'm going to start off with coming off of our audio samples. You heard when you are utilizing the optical zoom, you hear it in the recording. When it's autofocusing, you hear it. If you're worried about that in your recordings, you might want to mute that so you don't hear it, but just know that that is something that you'd have to be aware of. Likewise, since we're talking about audio, the movement of the camera, it's not subtle. If you are within earshot of this, 10, 15 feet out, you will hear this moving or focusing. So there's no subtlety with this if that's something you're looking for. The optical zoom, I kind of wish that it allowed you to have the camera do it by itself. If it started tracking somebody, that it could focus in on somebody. The zoom is only manually done. And that's, again, not a bad thing, just a data point. I kind of wish that when it was tracking, it could zoom in and then tilt up to help focus on somebody, as I've seen with some other brands. Again, data point, not a deal breaker. While we're talking about the ability for this camera to move, it is a little prohibited for its downward look, and that's due to the base and the cutout. I really think that this camera was designed to be put upside down and then utilized in this fashion, which in the application, you actually have the ability to change all of that up. But if you're getting it to just put on a desk like that, you're gonna lose out on some of your visibility down here. Again, it's not enough to say that this is a bad camera, but a data point for you to be aware of how these cutouts work. Speaking of data points, one thing that I neglected to mention on the front, because you can't really see it, there is an LED status light right there, just above the microphone. That LED status light is really dim and hard to see, especially if you have this placed on something. Aiming this down, it kind of pushes it out of view. The reason I ding that as a bad thing for this camera is, unlike some other cameras, that if you turn the camera off for privacy mode, the shutter either rolls up. This has an LED status light to let you know what's happening. If you can't see the LED status light because it's not bright enough or visible to you because of your placement, you don't know if it's recording or not. And I have feelings about that. Again, the Reolink brand itself is really meant to be on all the time. So it might have been an afterthought, but could also be changed in software updates in the future. I already talked about the lack of Alex A if you're in that ecosystem, and the fact that Reolink does not have that as of to date, but that could change in the future, or if it did, let me know in the comment section below and I'll pin your comment so that everybody else knows. The last detriment that I feel for the Reolink, if this is your first foray into home security products and you look at the application, the front end for the camera manipulation is perfectly fine. But once you get into that settings, the back end can be overwhelming. To a novice, you could scare yourself, really. There's a lot that you can do. And some of the wording and placement of some of the options, even for me, a seasoned veteran, was a little difficult to find at first. Once I got used to it, it wasn't an issue. But if this is your first camera, that could be a detriment. Just stay on the front end, play with the back end stuff once you get comfortable with the camera. Even with what feels like a laundry list of things that I didn't quite like about this camera, I still think this is a strong buy. And there's one topic that I didn't talk about because, again, that's more of an advanced feature, and that is the ability for Reolink to use an NVR. So that is your ability to set up your own home security monitoring system. So you know those fancy monitoring systems that you see in like the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and I just dated myself, where they have what looks like a server and a bunch of screens monitoring what's going on? That's an NVR. This camera, this budget intro level pan tilt camera, can be part of Reolink's NVR service. You can save all that data from this camera on a system like that. You can upgrade your system by purchasing other cameras with specific use cases, all building off of just this one camera. And because of that, I think that this is a really strong contender to be your first pan-tilt camera. The hardware might not be super flashy, but the brains behind it and the ability to expand on this system make this a strong recommendation for me. With that being said, I have been Wanderer001. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the area below. And as always, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, consider giving it a like, as that will help other people find the video as well. If you like what I'm doing here, you can always help fuel the next review by buying me a coffee, link in the description below. Last but not least, if you want to be notified when I upload a new video, you know what to do.